Hello and welcome to today's webinar from Actual Tech Media. The topic today is ransomware recovery for Microsoft environments, from Datacenter to Azure. Thank you so much for joining us on this special webinar event presented in partnership with our friends over at Rubric. Before we get started, there's a few things that you should know about the event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the host for the event today. We always want these events here at Actual Tech Media to be educational for you. We're all former IT professionals ourselves here. We know how tough it can be out there in the world of enterprise technology. You've got to be prepared to protect your data from ransomware. It's a constant threat, and we're going to learn a lot about that on the webinar today. We do encourage your questions. They're in the questions pane of the audience console, and experts from Rubric will be doing their best to respond to those electronically. If they don't get to all of them, of course, they'll do their best to get back to you after the event. We also have a number of handouts there for download. In the handouts tab, there are two Rubric resources. One of them is the Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft Environments paper. And then there's a solution brief on Microsoft 365 architecture and security, both related to today's presentation. So make sure that you download those and check them out after the event. And then finally, at the end of the webinar today, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, that drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found there in your handouts tab. All right, so with that, it's my pleasure now to introduce you to today's expert presenters. Welcome to Kim Lambert, Principal Product Marketing Manager at Rubric, and Joe Kelly, Cloud Solutions Architect, also from Rubric. Kim and Joe, it's great to have you on. I'll hand it off to you, Kim. Take it away.
All right. Hey, everyone. Yes, hi, Kim Lambert here. Thanks so much to everyone for taking time today to learn more about protecting your Microsoft environments. You know, as a product evangelist for cloud data security at Rubric, this is one of my favorite topics. And you're also in for a treat today because I have here one of our best technical gurus, Joe Kelly. He is a cloud solutions architect who is a 20+ year IT veteran. And Joe brings to you his expertise in automation, cloud architectures, cloud design, and he also has experience designing virtualization and storage systems for our customers with hybrid cloud environments, and also helping them implement cybersecurity best practices. So Joe's going to give you an in-depth demo of protection for some of your most critical workloads that you may be interested in protecting, including Azure VMs, Azure SQL, and Microsoft 365. So he's going to give you a great demo to show you how all that protection works in a unified way across hybrid and even multi-cloud environments. So today, here's what I want you to walk away knowing. If nothing else, I want you to understand how to be confident that your data is recoverable from cyber attack or even everyday data loss due to human error or whatnot. You know, why third-party protection for Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams data within Microsoft 365 is absolutely critical. And then also what an automated holistic approach to data protection does to combat your cyber risk and, you know, really make sure that you are resilient. So how do we at Rubric do these things? How do we look at this? Well, at Rubric, we provide a zero trust data security platform called Rubric Security Cloud, which we've built from the ground up. And Rubric Security Cloud helps customers around the world recover from cyber attacks and the actions of malicious insiders, as well as operational disruptions, all in the name of business continuity. And this makes your data across IaaS, PaaS, SaaS resilient. So wherever data lives, it's under a watchful eye where you can proactively monitor risks with powerful data observability capabilities like sensitive data discovery here, ransomware monitoring and investigation. And of course, so that you can easily recover, you can remediate, recover that data at a moment's notice at scale. And to be able to offer some of these top-notch capabilities, you should know that Rubric has partnered up with Microsoft for a combined zero trust approach to data security. So off the bat, you know that we're serious about helping customers secure their data in the public cloud. And Microsoft actually took an equity stake in Rubric at the end of 2021. So we work very closely with them as a strategic partner. And this partnership works well because we have a joint vision to protect customers from cybersecurity threats. And this partnership, it actually puts us in an incredibly favorable position to help you. So in terms of innovation and a technical support interlock. And John Thompson, former chairman of Microsoft, actually sits on our board. So we're in lockstep, even starting at the top with access to senior executives at Microsoft. And Microsoft and Rubric, we have this better together story. We go hand in hand in the sense that we already manage hundreds of petabytes on Azure. We have well over 2,500 joint customers, and we have this technology in place to secure your Microsoft data right alongside anything you have on-prem and in other cloud environments. Okay, so now, even though the shared responsibility model, something that people have been talking about for years and we all know exists and still applies, with our partnership, Microsoft is now an established and an invested player at this point. So they're actually taking a stance on recovery. So they're working with Rubric as a trusted third-party vendor for backup, which Microsoft even recommends, you can see here in their documentation, as the first step to ransomware recovery. Why? That's because, and you may be surprised to hear this, and we talk about this for Microsoft 365 a lot, is Microsoft provides no SLA for data recovery. Because whether that's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or SaaS apps, that shared responsibility model for data protection says the onus lies on you, the customer, to back up and recover your data. And the complexity behind this comes into play, especially when operating in hybrid multi-cloud or at an enormous scale. Because as you may be well aware already, you may be finding this as your data in the cloud grows, it can become a bit of this more cloud, more problems scenario with the breadth of apps and services that you're running and using in the cloud. And we find that this hits people in your organization differently, in different ways. With multi-cloud, someone has to be operationalizing backups across VMs, managed disks, databases in the cloud. We find that the infrastructure ops people want to be able to optimize costs so that they can, back up and quickly restore data and consolidate and simplify infrastructure. The cloud architects, on the other hand, they want to build fast in the cloud. They may not be worried about things like data governance. You've also got the modern workplace owners to think about who just want their applications and their data available with no interruption. Security ops, they need to be able to feel confident in your organization's ability to recover the data. And then, of course, think about your CIO here. They just want to be able to approve attack readiness. They want to be able to prove that they're ready. And that can be really tough with a complex organizational structure and goals. So we are thinking about all of these folks in the organization to make sure that your organization is successful in being resilient. Because when it comes to infrastructure operations, you think about it, a lot of times you've got multiple accounts to manage. Within cloud regions, you're going to need to be able to protect the data and set up different components around retention and frequency. Plus when you're deploying resources within multiple regions for each account, you're also managing backups for all of those different regions as well. And of course, don't forget about your data on-prem too, that needs to be protected as well. It needs the same governance and security if you operate in a hybrid model. So all this becomes a lot to manage. It's manual, it's resource intensive, it doesn't scale. And that's just data protection management. What about data security? What about being able to recover from secure, uncompromised backups? It's a lot to think about. It can be difficult to maintain visibility into your dynamic data security and protection requirements. Your recovery processes are siloed. And in a ransomware scenario, you very well may have one cloud hit or multiple cloud environments as well as your data center. So when you think about protecting fragmented data environments in the cloud, you may think, okay, I don't have as much of a problem with all this now, but you have to consider too, hey, maybe native tools are working for my AWS environment, but wait, I'm also utilizing Microsoft 365, and I've heard other teams talk about building in Azure. Maybe you even have a GCP environment to consider. So with all these platforms, you may not have the right experienced technical resources in place to not only manage backup jobs, but also be able to rapidly recover from clean data snapshots in the case of ransomware. And we find that many customers we talk to have struggled to obtain this holistic view, and they have difficulty even generating the data recovery readiness proof that they need for the CIO. So whether it's reports they can deliver or a plan they can present to the board. And that's where we at Rubric come in with Rubric Security Cloud. So when it comes to cloud, we offer a three-pronged approach. So we drive automated protection with secure backups that are logically air-gapped, and they're removed from identity boundaries that can be breached. Second, you can get started quickly. It's easy to scale as your business grows without breaking the bank. So you can ensure your cloud security resources are protected as your cloud architects build fast. With Rubric Security Cloud, you're eliminating a lot of toil by consolidating the data management layer, simplifying protection with a Rubric Sla Domain policy, which is simply a set of policies that define at what frequencies backups should be performed of the protected objects within Rubric, for how long should they be retained locally or with a replication partner or on the archival location. So with that capability, we drastically reduce the amount of operational impact it has on your team. And we've even got cloud tiering features to optimize storage costs in the process. You're managing everything through a single UI. All of this data is across all of your clouds on-prem, rather than managing silos of management points and deploying different resources in the cloud. We're consolidating it all. So this gives you a defined baseline backup across all resources, cloud and data center, for fast recovery when you need it. And when deploying cloud protection, even if you're coupling that with on-prem appliances or software delivered globally, that central management plane for data resilience, observability, and remediation can help you de-risk cloud. You can even assess potential PII, HIPAA data, other classified data exfiltration risk with things like sensitive data discovery for data and workloads like Microsoft 365. And you can fast track reporting across IaaS and PaaS. So these services we offer actually do three main functions. First, Rubric has the ability to archive to secure storage with the option of a Rubric managed service built on Microsoft Azure that is called Rubric Cloud Vault. And that provides an isolated offsite data archival. You can also use storage tiering for AWS and Azure for lower cost long-term cloud storage. And by design, our storage tiering capability is actually what provides immutable backups for your Azure VMs and managed disks, because it utilizes native Azure Blob immutability. Now, we also have the ability to launch existing applications in the cloud, so that accelerates the move away from your on-prem infrastructure by instantiating your VMs and applications. And then finally here on the right, we secure cloud-native applications across clouds with protection for all your popular workloads like EC2, RDS, Azure SQL. And of course, Microsoft 365 as well. So I feel like I need to cover this because for so many of the customers that we talk to, so many organizations, Microsoft 365 has become not only a tier 1 application and critical to operations, but also now a huge target for attackers. That's why it's so important to talk about this. Attackers know that this is where they can hit you hard. And while Microsoft does provide data security and thinking about perimeter security, data governance, Rubric is on hand there for the recovery piece. So whether it's for ransomware recovery from accidental deletion, or even just having a tool for long-term retention for everyday instances where you need to recover 60, 90-day-old data that's been lost and you can't recover it with Microsoft native tools alone. That's where we come in. So while Microsoft 365 does have functionality to help you control access, right? Like they focus on this, keeping attackers out. They've got compliance tools like retention policies to help you schedule deletion so you don't keep data longer than you need. In reality, tools like this, like retention hold, can be misused. Think about an account takeover to delete data, or data can be deleted by accident when the compliance policies are not maybe well understood within the organization. So think about that. That can actually be a tool used against you. Microsoft also has classification and search tools like litigation hold to help you with compliance and e-discovery. But legal hold is not designed to be a backup and recovery failsafe. And Microsoft actually only recommends using it for a subset of your data. But with Rubric, we can make sure that there is an isolated copy of all your data in Azure, but physically separated from the Microsoft 365 tenant and solution. So you can recover in bulk or use a granular 3-step recovery to any destination and easily locate data with real-time global search. So recovery at scale for Microsoft 365 is made available with Azure Kubernetes service, where Rubric stands up separate containers for every backup job. And that way, the system scales automatically based on the workload demand. So we can help multiple customers recover at scale at the same time. So you've got that protection for your Microsoft 365 data as well within the SaaS-based Rubrik Security Cloud. And I'd like to reinforce here that Rubric Security Cloud actually offers a real differentiator to our customers, and that is immutability in the cloud to even further protect your backup data with immutable backups for Azure managed disks, immutable and air gap backups for Azure VMs, so that you got that ransomware resiliency for Azure deployments, those air gap backups for Microsoft 365. And I mention, we also have air gap backups for AWS RDS, for our Amazon Web Services customers to protect from AWS account compromise. And then added to this is our ability to leverage object lock on AWS S3 too. So that creates a worm lock capability there. We've also got air-gapped cross-subscription portable backups for Azure SQL, and that can help protect you against rogue administrators or ransomware. And this is a big deal for those of you out there who have or will migrate from on-prem SQL Server, because we do offer point-in-time recoverability for Microsoft Azure SQL. And the way that we do that in the most secure way is by taking database snapshots that are stored in a separate hardened subscription, where we then take worm locks on the uploaded data so that we can ensure that it remains secure. Now for Azure SQL, portability is a big benefit there, because we offer that so that your data can be recovered to a different location if there is a case of compromise, or even if you're just doing dev test in a sandbox environment. So keep in mind that today the only way to protect Azure SQL with Azure Backup Service currently requires a little bit of complex management, where you have to go inside each server, create policies inside each one. And that's why with Rubrik Security Cloud, you have this fully baked policy model to automate your protection, and it lets you restore in and across regions, backup pretty much as often as you like, and institute things like tag-based SLAs. But how does protection for all these workloads we've been talking about, including Azure SQL, fit into your whole security strategy? Well, when you think about enterprise, it's really around adding multiple layers of protection so that they can converge in a threat scenario. So you've got perimeter security, network security, endpoint, application security. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when these layers are going to be breached. So thinking about all the things that Microsoft provides, no matter how much you've invested in them and ingrained yourself in the data security capabilities of cloud vendors like Microsoft. For infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, for example, think about if you're moving your traditional on-prem SQL Server databases over to Azure SQL. Just migrating to the cloud alone doesn't mean that there's going to be data security in place. So, for instance, know that right now, that limited native backup functionality that Microsoft Backup Service has, it's having you go inside each server, create policies inside each. And why does that matter? Well, you need to know that, hey, if a new database comes up, you have to manually go in and set up policies. What if someone creates a new database without you knowing? Bam, there's a new hole in your data security. So it's important to have something more comprehensive there. And when you think about the SaaS space, though, security layers that are part of that traditional defense and the depth strategy, they're actually managed by your SaaS-based platform vendors. So it's why you make the switch to SaaS in the first place, to make your life easier. But this also has the effect of putting security out of your purview. And keep in mind, enterprise security is different for SaaS, right? So the security layers for SaaS actually become identity and authentication layers, where the main entry point for threat actors is your user credentials, your logins. That's how malicious users gain access. So you have the tools that Microsoft provides, of course, which we talked about, that native Microsoft 365 tool set. They provide for Microsoft 365 retention policies, litigation hold for a subset of your data, plus even the recycle bin with varying times of retention across the different 365 applications. But if the identity and security layers are breached and admin credentials are compromised, you're out of luck without a secure backup plan. So Rubric fits in there as a critical part of your defense in depth strategy. So if those top layers are breached, you now have that logical, secure air gap between your core data and your backup data that is protected by Rubric. So even when your security defenses fail, your data is still protected. You're resilient. You have a secure backup from which you can restore your data, and you have a strategy to quickly recover to keep your organization running. All right, I've said a lot, but talk is cheap, right? So let me turn things over to Joe, where he's going to actually demo our protection for your Microsoft Cloud data with Rubric Security Cloud.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Kelly. I am a cloud solutions architect here at Rubric, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to our next generation platform referred to as Rubric Security Cloud. If you've never heard of RSC, what it does is provides a unified management interface that's going to centralize control and visibility of all your data. So whether that data set exists on premises, whether or not it exists in the cloud, we don't care. We provide the ability to be able to protect those resources through this interface itself. So you can think global management, you can think global monitoring, alerting, reporting. We'll go over for most of those aspects as part of this demo. Some of the other things that we provide are operational simplicity at scale. So think in the context of frequency and retention, and the ability to be able to take what the construct we refer to as an SLA domain and applying that to these resources within your hierarchy within Azure. So defining those at the sub level, the resource group, and even defining those based on certain tags. We're also going to go through some of the guided workflows for recovery. So the ability to be able to pull individual files and folders out of a snapshot, the ability to be able to restore a VM to a particular point in time that you've chosen, and then also the ability to be able to export across the account boundary or sub boundary within your Azure tenant, as well as the region boundary as well. We'll also take a look at, primarily today, we'll take a look at how we're protecting Azure VMs, managed disks, Azure SQL databases. Of course, we also support managed instances, but we'll stay in the lane of databases today, and then also our M365 protection. So we got a lot to get through in a short amount of time, so let's go ahead and get going. So I'm going to focus in on just quickly talk about how we would add a cloud account. We do have this add cloud account workflow. Simply, you provide the provider here, the cloud provider, in this case Azure. We would go through what level of protection we want to provide for this account that we're adding. You can see here we do protect or support rather virtual machines, managed disks, SQL databases, Azure SQL managed instances, and there's this notion of Exo Compute, which we'll get into in a little bit. But you can think of Exo Compute, that name is a Rubric name, and under the covers, we are basically what facilitates Exo Compute is this ability for us to be able to spin up an AKS cluster within your account. We need this level of compute to do things such as archiving. So if you want to apply an archive location within your SLA domain, we would need Exo Compute to do that. If you wanted to provide file indexing for your particular snapshots, then we would need Exo Compute. And then last but not least, Exo Compute is also needed for any application consistent snapshots that you want to take for your Azure VMs. So assuming that all of this was required for the account that you're added, you would check those boxes. You type in your primary AD domain or custom AD domain for your AD tenant. We hit sign in. We're going to sign in with an account that has permissions to be able to create a service principal within Azure AD and custom roles within your subscription. So the custom roles will basically map to the service principal, and that's how you authenticate into your account using OAuth 2.0, and then that service principal will be defined to the level of access that those custom roles have. So a very easy process to get that going. If I were to add a domain in here, the next screen after I log into Azure would be us selecting regions and subscriptions where you have resources that you want to protect. It's really just a couple more screens outside of this, and then we would have the ability to go out and discover those Azure VMs within those particular locations. Once they're discovered, they're going to show up in these inventory cards here. So I'll go to the all section for inventory cards. You can see here that I have SaaS-based, cloud, data center, all, and pinned. So these are different inventory cards based on what we're protecting. So you can see here as it relates to cloud, we protect Azure SQL Databases, managed instances. On the AWS side, EC2, RDS, and then on the GCP side, it would be basically we're orchestrating snapshots of persistent volumes and GCE instances. So we're going to jump into Azure VMs and applications. You can see here that we have a VM here that we'll be kind of demoing with today. Before we get into that level of detail, we're going to take a look at as to where we would assign these backup policies, these declarative backup policies referred to as SLA domains. Here at the top, you can see here, these are what I refer to as different entry points for the SLA domain itself. We're going to go into the process of creating an SLA domain here in just a second, but where we would apply those policies would be at these different levels. So obviously you could apply it at the VM level, managed disk, but we also have these higher level entities such as the sub, such as the resource groups, and such as tag rules. So we could very easily map an SLA at the sub level where essentially this will basically apply any SLA domain to any Azure VM that comes up within the subscriptions that you choose here. Same with the resource group. If you want to pinpoint certain resource groups and then have us assign or have RSC assign an SLA based on that resource group, that is where you would do it. And then where we have a lot of customers focusing their attention are these tag rules. These tag rules allow you to select whether you want to apply this to a VM or a managed disk. You give it a name, and then you give it the key value pair of a particular tag that you are utilizing within your Azure tenant as of today. Here at the bottom, you would choose onesie twosies, your subscriptions that you want to apply this tag rule to. You could do all of it with this one checkbox. And then in essence, the next screen will allow us to select the SLA that will get assigned based on the tag that we define here, right? So very easily, or kind of to simplify this process, you have a tag that exists on an Azure VM. You're telling RSC about this tag with this key value pair, and then what subscriptions you want to apply that to. And then the next screen, once I hit next, once I pre-populate this information, I would choose the SLA that I want to assign as part of this tag rule. At that point, RSC takes her from there, right? So anytime it sees that particular tag, it's going to automatically assign that level of protection to that particular resource. So very easy way to get going and to automate protection of those resources across multiple subscriptions. So this product, this solution, RSC, really does an awesome job of operating at scale. If you have a single account, then you have a single account. If you have hundreds of accounts and you're looking to kind of simplify data protection and some of the capabilities that RSC provides, then this is the solution for you. We'll jump back into virtual machines here. Some of the items that we see here are specific to Azure, such as VM size, subnet, VNet, etc. And then over here on the right-hand side, we can see things specific to Rubric, such as file indexing, exocompute, and then the assignment of the SLA domains. You can see here in particular, this does not have an SLA domain. However, we do have some snapshots associated with this VM that we'll take a look at here for the recovery options. Now that we've kind of understood what we're looking at here, let's jump into SLA domains. So this is core to automating and operationalizing our solution. So here you choose what object types you want to protect. So it could be data center objects, could be cloud objects, could be a combination of both. These are global SLA domains. They do apply across those boundaries, those physical boundaries. You just have to choose those options, those object types as part of this workflow. In this case, we're going to choose, for the purpose of this creation, we're just going to choose Azure VM and disks. We'll hit next. And then again, the core of the SLA domain is frequency and retention. So I'm going to define that very simply as take a snapshot once a day and then retain those snapshots for 30 days. So if we left it as is and didn't go through the rest of this workflow, this would right here define the primary managed disk snapshot that's going to occur for an Azure VM. Some of the other entries here that we're going to go over here in just a second are going to provide copies of that snapshot. Down here at the bottom, you can do things such as snapshot windows if you wanted to kind of lessen the window for when we take those snapshots. And then you can also do the same type of window, time window for the first full snapshot, because we are first full incremental forever technology. We hit next. we can toggle on archiving here. So the archiving piece is very interesting from this perspective. When we create an archive location, we're defining within RSC the storage account and the level and the disk tier associated with that storage account for those archive entities. So for instance, this archive in particular, we've defined it within a storage account that's defined as cool. So those objects will go into that cool tier. Hot and cool is what we support today. This is a cool tier archive location. Some of the other things that we apply to this location as well as we're creating, so we do create this archive location as part of the workflows within RSC. We are turning on blob-based immutability, and we are turning on versioning within that storage account itself. Why you would want to use archiving, we'll get into some of this threshold capabilities down here at the bottom, and why you would want to use archiving is really for multiple different reasons. One, you're getting those snapshots off of the very expensive managed disk tier, if you will, for those managed disk snapshots, and you're bringing them down to object storage, which is going to save you dollars. We're also compressing those snapshots as well, in the neighborhoods of 40 for 50% compression that we would apply to those particular snapshots. And then finally, we're also applying immutability. So we do provide this sliding window approach to the immutability aspect for those blobs. So for instance, if you had a 6-week retention on those snapshots, when those snapshots hit that archive location, we're going to automatically apply a 4-week retention lock to that blob. 2 weeks into that 4-week period, so just let me say that again, 2 weeks into that 4-week period, we're going to extend that window for immutability another 4 weeks. So now we're at our full 6-week retention, right? So we're doing the sliding window so we don't have to apply the full immutability. If you have much longer retentions, we're doing so in a very incremental way. So cost optimization, saving money as it relates to storing those snapshots. The compression, so we're storing those in a very optimized manner, and then also, last but not least, is the immutability aspect of that archive. Down here at the bottom, we have the ability to do instant archiving. If we desire, that means that we're going to instantly archive to that location once we create the snapshot. We can define when we want that archiving to take place if we weren't doing instant archive, because obviously that's going to be instant. So we can say here, I want you to archive after 3 days. Right, so after 3 days of managed disk snapshots, we'll begin archiving on the 4th day to that archive location. If we enable instant archive, now I have the ability to set some sort of retention on the local storage, which means at the primary location, the snapshot closest to the Azure VM, I can now set a retention on that for how long I want to keep those snapshots. So in this case, you can see here with 0 days, I'm going to instantly archive that snapshot once it's taken, that primary managed disk snapshot. I'm going to archive it, and then I'm going to delete that primary. So I have nothing resident within that managed disk tier. This is great for cost optimization. However, if I wanted to maintain a couple days on local storage, I could do that by sliding the scale over. So very interesting aspect as it relates to cloud native protection. This is a huge one, in my opinion, for Azure workloads. Now we get into really the tertiary copy, right? The ability to be able to replicate that across regions. So a lot of customers obviously design around the potential outage of a region. We can replicate those snapshots across region with this option. So you would just choose your destination region, usually a region outside of the primary, and then we would expire those replica copies based on the retention that you set here. Last but not least, we have our confirmations page. You just review what we've inputted so far, and we'd hit create. Now that we have an Sla domain, we can go back to our inventory tab. We go to the Azure VMs inventory card, and then I can begin assigning that SLA at these different levels, or I can assign it directly to the VMs that exist in this list. So we're going to jump into the VM in particular and take a look at some of the options here that are presented to us. So on the left-hand side, we do have this overview tab, which again is going to give us detailed information on the level of protection, Rubric protection that we're offering for this VM, and then also some of the object details around where it exists within Azure. We can also see what managed disks it has allocated to it, and then we do have the ability up here to be able to exclude those disks other than the OS disk. You can see here it's grayed out. And then down here at the bottom, if we did want to do application consistent snapshots, there would be some level of configuration that would need to be done with pre and post scripts, and we would require the agent and guest to do so. I also have the ability over here, since I do have indexing, or do have some index snapshots in this case with this VM, I do have the ability to search across those snapshots for files and folders, whatever that name is. I'm going to do a very simple search for etc or etc. And then I can see the selected snapshot and the ability to recover from that. And then also over here on the events, I can see any failures that have taken place and dig into some of the details, and then of course go through and correct some of the maybe the architectural type changes that need to take place for this to complete. So very detailed information as it relates to the events associated with this VM. Of course, we also have a global event viewer that will report on all the events associated with those objects under the purview of RSC itself. And then last but not least, this snapshot section or column does provide us to have a view into all the snapshots that have been taking place for this particular VM. If we jump into overview again, we go to the calendar view. Now we'll get into some of the recovery options. So I'll pick a snapshot, and then I'll go through each of these recovery options. So recover files, again, I can search, right? Same type of search capabilities. I pick my files, I hit next. In this case, I have the ability, since we do have multiple copies of this particular VM, I can choose what snapshot I want to recover from. I hit next, and then today for file and folder recovery, it is to a storage account, either existing or a new storage account. We can create that for you. If we jump back to the restore option, very simple workflow here. This allows us to basically replace disks associated with a virtual machine based on the snapshot we've chosen. So we orchestrate that entire process while still maintaining the original virtual machine ID and any private IPs associated with that VM itself. So we'll power it down, swap the disk, power it back up. We handle all that for you. The export option, this is where it gets interesting, right? So now we can do exports from multiple different copies depending on how this is configured. So we'll say in this case I'll choose from the original copy. I can change the machine name, the virtual machine name. I can go cross subscription with this export if I wanted to, so I can go across that account boundary or billing boundary, if you will. I can also change the resource group, go across region. So a lot of different options for launching this particular VM, as it is going to be a new VM based on the original VM and that snapshot of that point in time. So great flexibility, great simplicity as it relates to backing up and recovering these particular instances or VMs within Azure itself. We'll take a look at Azure Sql Databases real quick. Same type premise. You'll notice that as we move between different services, very different services, the look and feel and the layout is very similar. So again, these are the databases that we've discovered, just like the Azure VMs. They show up in the middle here. These are our filtering options, and these are the different levels that we can assign SLAs at. If we jump into the demo SQL VM, you can see here, same level of detail, overview events, and then I have the option to recover, because we are doing log-based backups with this particular database. I can recover from a particular point in time that has been taken, or I can recover from a snapshot that's been taken. So if we're looking at this calendar view, you can see that this green line denotes log-based backups, and then these checkboxes denote snapshots, snapshot-based backups. So we'll take a look here on a particular date. We'll choose the 8th. And then there's two different potential workload flows here. So we do have this slider scale here where we can slide to very granular point in times to do log-based recovery. These cameras denote the scheduled snapshots that we've chosen. The recover for the log backup would take place as follows. So we choose the database name. It would need to be different from the original. We are doing an export essentially, so there doesn't allow for a lot for the ability to restore back to the originating database. So we are creating a new database as way of the export. We can't change the region for these log-based backups, can't change the database server or resource group, but we can change things such as backup redundancy or the elastic pool, or add an elastic pool if we have one available here, and we can change whether or not the tags are exported. So that would be the recovery for log-based recovery. For a snapshot-based recovery, we can go here. We've got both an on-demand and a scheduled. We'll just go to the scheduled one. Now we've got options where we can do things like go cross-subscription and cross-region with this export as well. So we would need to define those credentials, username and password, whether they're SQL credentials or AD credentials for that database itself. And then we would select the subscription region and even go cross database server for recovery of this particular database. So a lot of different recovery options as it relates to these databases, both in the same sub, out of the out of that sub and out of that region as well. All right, so that handles kind of the Azure SQL database piece. We'll just quickly jump into the M365 dashboard, and then we'll take a look at some of the reporting capabilities to kind of round things out. So one of the dashboards we do provide is this M365 dashboard, which is going to support the ability to back up Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And so why would you want to back up this SaaS offering from Microsoft? Well, very simply is that Microsoft is not responsible for the recovery of your data. So it's really on you to back up this data, and they typically recommend using a third party to back up your M365 applications. So hence, here we are. What we provide within this view here is the ability to not only verify that the service is online, because obviously that's important from an SLA perspective. If the service is down, we can't integrate with it. You'll start to see these two particular cards start sparking errors and warnings, and you'll also see the compliancy rate start to drop because we're not able to create those snapshots of those applications. You can also kind of drop into each of the applications themselves, see the number of protected resources, any failed and successful backups, and then the level of SLA domain compliance. You can see here in particular for Exchange, we're at 99.7%. If we wanted to assign an SLA domain to the service itself, very simple. You go into Assign SLA Domain. Here we have SLAs already defined to Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It is the same SLA, however, they could be different based on the retention and frequency requirements that you have defined for the SLA itself. All right, so let's jump into a service. We'll jump into Exchange. We'll take a look at Exchange and OneDrive just in the interest of time. Here, same look and feel within the UI, right? We have the ability to be able to, we're taking a look at users right now. We have our filtering options, and of course we have our mailboxes that have been discovered here in the middle. So let's search for my email or my mailbox. Go to Joe Kelly, and we'll go to the 8th, seems to be a good date, and then we'll go to recover. So this is quickly going to show you just the recovery process for a mailbox or contents of my mailbox. So again, my mailbox here, I'm going to hit next. Let's dig a little bit into my mailbox. Let's go grab maybe a particular email that I want recovered. I hit next. I have the ability to be able to restore it to the original user or to another user. Obviously, we use this in cases where maybe the user was let go, they were fired, and their manager wanted access to their mailbox. This will be a good use case for that. And you can see here at the top, we are going to create a folder within either the original user, myself, or another user that we will restore those contents to. So in this case, the folder would be called RBK, and then a timestamp of today. We would create that folder and then restore those contents into that folder. Next screen just is kind of a confirmation page. We hit recover, and then away that process would go to facilitate that ask. From the aspect or the perspective of OneDrive, rather, same type option. We go into, let's say, the 8th. We do a recover. We would select into the drive. Let's just choose something random here. Presentations. I'm going to choose the week 2 presentation. Choose next. Now I have one more option here. I have the ability to recover to the OneDrive the original user, myself. Again, I'm going to create this folder. to restore the contents to. And then it can also go to another user, could be a manager, could be someone else. And then I also have this third option where I can download from the cloud. So we'll zip up those objects and then provide them in a zip format for you to download to your system. We'll hit next, confirmation page as usual, and then recover. So again, you can see here we've provided this very simple way to protect your M365 applications in addition to your Azure VMs and your Azure SQL managed instances and databases. Last but not least, reporting capabilities. Obviously, reporting is a good thing, and the ability to report across all of those protection operations, no matter, again, if they're on premises or in the cloud, is certainly something you would want out of a tool like this. So we do provide that, where you could go in here, you could run this compliance report. It is going to tell you whether or not those objects are meeting their SLAs, meaning they're in compliance, or they're out of compliance, which means they're not meeting their SLA domains. And then depending on the object, you can kind of dig into that particular object and determine what's causing the hang up. It could be, potentially something environmental, could be something else. So anyway, it does allow you to jump in there and take a look and determine why it's not meeting this SLA. It could be service-based as well. We can also take these compliance reports, and again, we could take them to a CSV, PDF. We could send it via email. You can add a schedule so it's sent via email. So a lot of different ways to get these reports into the appropriate hands within your organization. Alrighty, so I think that is enough for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this demo of our new next generation platform, Rubric Security Cloud. Look forward to talking with you guys in the future. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. So to wrap up, we talked about securing your backups with a secure logical air gap, achieving a baseline backup across hybrid and multi-cloud, and unifying your visibility in the process. And Joe showed you that. Rubric has your back for data security, especially if you need to secure your critical Microsoft environment against data loss. Our team really looks forward to hopefully working with you. In the meantime, check out some of our most popular resources. We'll make that available, including white papers on Rubric Zero Trust for Microsoft, a pretty hot off the press updated version of our Microsoft 365 architecture and security white paper, where you can dig into all of those details as well. All right, so let's do Q&A. First question, do you know how many businesses protect their 365 data versus those that use Microsoft out-of-the-box protection? Yeah, we see that to be about 74%. I know that because we put that on slides a lot, according to third-party research from ESG. So in actuality, our team sees closer to about 85% in a lot of our conversations with customers, though. So people really are thinking about this and protecting that Microsoft 365 data with third-party protection. Next question, why did Microsoft partner with Rubric versus other vendors? Yeah, a great question. So, our counterparts at Microsoft, I've heard this from them, they say that there are several key differentiators with Rubric that drove their decision to partner with us. So first, that very large overlap of joint customers. We're looking at almost about 3,000 today, getting about there, growing rapidly. Simple customer experience. They found it to be the most API first, cloud first platform, and that allows a lot of automation and easy leveraging of the cloud. They also said our great focus on security. We are a data security company. We've got some market first capabilities with sensitive data discovery, ransomware monitoring and investigation. And finally, our modern SaaS architecture. So Rubric Security Cloud frees up customers from the burden of deploying backup infrastructure for workloads. So all of that led Microsoft to partner with Rubric. All right, question. Can't Microsoft restore data within 14 days? Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, think about Microsoft 365. So that's correct. I'll echo the words of one of our technical counterparts over at Microsoft, and we present frequently with them in saying that yes, Microsoft has a native recycle bin. They've got policies to restore your data, but Most sophisticated ransomware attacks are discovered well beyond that time frame. And in that time frame, assets can get affected, deleted progressively, which can make the restore process much, much harder to manage. So because of that, you really do need third-party protection like Rubric Security Cloud. All right, question. With the air gap for Microsoft, is there pen testing to make sure it's secure? Sure. So with the logical air gap, the air gapping is provided by data hosted in a Rubric managed environment that's built on top of Microsoft's secure and durable Azure blob storage platform. So, full architecture and performance reviews per the well-architected framework from Microsoft do ensure that they're continuing enhancements and confirmation of the security and compliance of the Rubric solutions built on Microsoft. That is something that I know they do. From the Rubric side, we do leverage a third party to pen test the environment on a regular basis, along with a multitude of other security controls, which our team can definitely discuss with you directly so that we can get all of your questions answered there. All right, question. For the air gap between my own Azure tenant and the Rubric Azure tenant, if a bad actor breached my own tenant, would they be able to elevate themselves to be able to delete my data stored in Rubric? Okay, all right, so this is another air gap question. And you're asking if, all right, in this situation, yeah, all right. The answer is no. First of all, if a bad actor breached your own Azure tenant, would they be able to delete data stored within Rubric's tenant? Okay, so there's no way to access the backup data with your Azure credentials. So the Azure identity is separated from the identity you'll use to log into the managed Rubric Azure tenant. So this means if a bad actor breaches your Azure tenant, your Rubric account and therefore your backups are still secure. And think about that. This is actually really better than provisioning an Azure storage account or any storage infrastructure connected to your environment. Identity separation is absolutely key, and we provide that.
All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions. Looks like we handled most of the questions that came in. We'll be routing those over to Kim and Joe and the Rubric team to respond to right after the event here. Thank you so much to everyone out there in the audience for all the excellent questions. We do appreciate it. For more information, of course, check out the handouts tab there in your audience console. There are 2 handouts, resources from Rubric. You want to make sure that you download before the event wraps up. Before we conclude here, I do want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. Let's see. We've got one lucky winner on the event today, and this one is going out to Valinda Santero from Idaho. Congratulations, Valinda Santero from Idaho. We'll reach out to you. And of course, thank you to our friends at Rubric for supporting us on the event today. For more information, visit Rubric.com. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.